Alright everyone, welcome to Deep Dives with Dogs. Well, today we're going to talk about the Mexican-American War. This war takes place about 1846 to 1848. The first battle of this war will have a very important American, and later in his life, be a part of it. And that would be General Zachary Taylor. Zachary Taylor um, becomes president, funnily enough. And it's kind of because of his service during this war. And this war will also have a lot of faces and names that will be important for the American Civil War as well. Um, a lot of the generals and uh, some of the soldiers, quite a few of the soldiers, will have had some experience or knowledge of the Mexican-American War. A lot of the guys at West Point, um, but yeah, like Grant Lee, Zachary Taylor did by this point, but but Grant and Lee at least, and there's a few others. Obviously, there's a lot of them, but they all kind of participated in this war. And it starts with the Battle of Palo Alto. It's Zachary Taylor leading American forces in a victory against Mariana Artima, I believe is how his name is pronounced, the Mexican general. A lot of Zachary Taylor's successes in this war obviously will lead him to become president. There's actually another general during this time who will be around well into the American Civil War, who also tries to become president from this. It does not work. Um, this happens, you know. But uh, this war, there's a lot of reasons it happens. Many of the Americans at the time didn't necessarily agree with it. Um, the idea was, oh, Mexico was doing this or that. And were they really? Not really, but that's how it was going to be sold. But yeah, many of the generals didn't really agree with it. Grant, for instance, he talked about how he had kind of a disdain for it, um, because they didn't think they should have been there. But the results of this war will be that America will get a lot of the Southwest, what is now the United States is Southwest. So places like New Mexico, you get places like Arizona, parts of California, all that stuff. You get a bunch of that land over that out there in Nevada, those kind of places. A lot of that was Mexican territory. And when I say get, I mean we will quote unquote buy it from the Mexicans. Um, they spent about $5 million for it. So, kind of a steal. Obviously, they did pay for it, but it was like, oh, okay, well, we beat you in war. Here, we'll give you some money, I guess, for this land. That's kind of how it's sold. Um, but this war, obviously, like I said, ends in American victory. And there's many tactics and things that are learned during this war that will be implemented into the American Civil War. That's kind of how it always happens with wars right before a big war. You can notice a lot of the same people that would become famous in the big war later on did participate in a smaller war right before. And so they will learn some tactics, learn things like that, that will affect how they do things in the big war. A good example of this is the Franco-Prussian War, or um, even the Russo-Japanese War before the First World War. Really influences a lot of the First World War. For instance, the Russo-Japanese War, um, it influences why Russia really wants to get into this war, why they feel they have to get into the First World War. A lot of it. Obviously, they're trying to defend people, of course, as well, but they also feel very slighted by their loss against Japan in that war. So they want to say, hey, look, Russia, we're strong still, things like that. The emperor wants to show himself as very strong and, of course, lead to many unnecessary deaths. And the Franco-Prussian War really influences a lot of things that happen during uh, during that war as well. How certain tactics play out, why the French are so harsh after the war to the Germans, just a lot of things like that. And the Spanish-American War is no different. You will see a lot of the obviously the generals. They get their feet wet, you could say, um, in this war, and they understand a lot more tactics. And for future, for the future of Mexican history, this will be kind of a really fatal blow to the potential of a great Mexican empire, or even not necessarily empire, but an even greater Mexican state. You gotta remember they own a lot of land that today is extremely uh, resource intensive. Um, is very helpful for industry, things like that. And when Mexico gets that kind of taken away, it becomes a lot more weakened in a lot more weakened state, and it will cause unrest for quite a while. Um, but it's one of those wars that's kind of forgotten, just in the grand scheme of things. I'm sure not by many Mexicans, of course, but most of the world doesn't even really know about it as much. And in America, it is one of those considered footnotes. You know, it's a war that they talk about it, but they don't go into very good depth, you could say, because the American Civil War will be not long after, and for American history, it's a little bit more influential, you could say. But the Mexican American War still has a huge mark on history today that many wouldn't necessarily consider. But that's going to do it for this video. If you guys liked the video, leave a like. If you have anyone who's going to approve these videos, leave a comment down below. I always read your comments. And as always, subscribe. It really does help out the channel. Thank you.